Hey guys, it's Iris Illusion coming at you with another fun makeup tutorial, and I'm going to take you from this to this. Be sure to stay tuned to see all the step-by-steps it takes to achieve my signature makeup style. Be sure to stick around for it, and I hope you enjoy. And until then, love you guys and enjoy the show. Starting with priming my face using the Wet n Wild Clingy Serum Primer, the Essence Cosmetics Jelly Grip Hydrating Primer, and the She Glam Triple Threat Correcting Primer to give my face a tacky base for the foundation to sit on. Next up, using the Rimmel Multitasker Better Than Filters Foundation in the shade Fair Light. This just helps to give a little bit more coverage in spots I needed to, which would include the eyebrows and the sideburns of my face. Going in next with my foundations, using the Maybelline Superstay Foundation in 112 Natural Ivory and the LA Colors Long Lasting Matte Foundation in the shade Natural. Going into contours next, I am using the Revolution Eye Bright Concealer in Warm Chestnut as my deepest tone, the Lang Mani Liquid Bronzer in Light to Medium as my mid-tone, and then going into my Milani Foundation in 250 Sand Beige just to give my contours a bit of dimension. This helps to play with the shadows of the face to really enhance certain features, as well as playing with the shadows to reduce and receive other features. Going into highlighting next, I'm using the Rimmel Multitasker Concealer in the shade Porcelain to really give my forehead a bright center, which is where you want the light to be focused the most on the face. Going into my brows next, I'm using the L'Oreal Infallible Full Face in Mocha, as well as an angular brow brush to start my brow base off. This just to help give out the shape, and I'm drawing a more natural-esque art. Setting the upper forehead using a mixture of Coty Airspun powders and the Made Cheer Fine Powder to set my makeup in place before moving on to the powder forms. Going back into the brows, I'm using a medium brow shade from the Hard Candy Brow Collection just to give my brows an initial shape. It doesn't have to be perfect right now, for we will be cleaning it up with concealer and liquids later. Using a Wet n Wild liquid liner in the shade Black Brown H2O Proof, we're using this on the back ends of the brows to where it is stronger in the front but more faded in the back. This just to help give a more general shape. After setting the liner with a deeper shade, I am then using an LA Colors Liquid Pen liner to give off the more generalized brow hair shapes, before going in with an LA Colors concealer in Fair to clean up the undersides of the brows, as well as giving our brow highlight. It doesn't have to necessarily be this stark, but when I'm doing a full face of makeup, I certainly love making sure that I have a very bright brow highlight. Moving on to the eyes, we are priming with two different primers, which is the Profusion Pigment Base Primer in Neutral and the NYX Ultimate Eye Base Primer in shade 1, and we're just going to use this to prime the eyes to make sure that our shadow has something to cling on to. Starting off with our eyeshadows, using the ColourPop Limoncello, we are going with Sigmund Frito as our lightest shade first to give our crease a generalized shape. This is considered the transition shade, if you will. Going into the darker shade known as Vespa, we are using this to give our outer corners a more defined shape as well as defining our crease, but we will be going back and forth with both colors to give a more blended appearance. Going in with the Revolution Cut Crease Canvas along with a flat concealer brush, I'm using this to cut the crease. You can use the concealer if you would like, however this is just the best product for me because of its viscosity. Now topping the lid with the yellow shade known as Amalfi, along with the two glimmer shades known as Serenade and Capri. This is just what we will use to top both of the lids, which will give a more lemon lime appearance. And now that we've finished one eye, let's move on over to the other. And just like that, we have both eyes pretty much evened out. And now we are going to be moving on to the lower portion of the face. Taking the same Rimmel foundation, we are just going to be priming the lower half of the face since I didn't use a primer before, because my nose doesn't generally hold on to foundations very well, so this is sort of the last step for it. Moving on to concealer, I'm using the Maybelline Superstay Active in shade 1 to sharpen the under eye as well as brightening it, before moving on to using another concealer. Then using the same Rimmel concealer just focused around the nose and the center to really give it that blown out under eye highlight. Going into the nose contour, using the NYX Wonder Stick in the shade Medium contour stick, I'm using this to give my nose a very skinny appearance, as well as using a fluffier brush to buff out the sides of the nose so that way it is not as harsh. Going in with the lower foundation, I'm using the Hard Candy Glamouflage in the shade Beige, along with the two foundations mentioned before, which is the LA Colors and Maybelline Superstay, to blend everything down and pushing it all the way down the neckline, before going in with a third foundation, which is using the Ellen Tracy Oil Control Concealer in the shade Medium, to making sure everything is all on an even playing field. I definitely love using more mattifying products so that way there is no texture or anything showing up underneath. Going in with the same contour as we used for the forehead, I'm using the Revolution as the deepest contour shade to initially give my cheek a defining appearance, then using the Langmanique bronzer to help buff everything out, and then topping it all off with the Milani foundation just to make sure everything is all blended out. Using this will help to really define the cheekbones to give a more lifted appearance, as what we queens would love to use as our makeshift plastic surgery, if you will. Going in with liquid blushes next, I'm using the B Color Liquid Blush in Coral Crush along with the Langmani Liquid Blush in Cosmetic, and using this to really create a very cheerful blush color. It's not too much and it's not too orange, but it does have a nice subtle appearance. And just like before, using my Airspun concoction, I am making sure to set the lower half of the face before dusting everything together and making sure it is all blended out. For the nose contour, I'm using the Physicians Formula Bitter Butter Illuminating Powder, and then going in with the contour, which is the LA Colors Shape It Contour Palette, and using a simple fluffy brush to get the sides and the forehead. To really emphasize the skinniness of the nose, I'm using the Essence Cosmetics 16 Cover and Last Pressed Powder in Porcelain. And then going in with the Wet n Wild Pink Loose Powder to really help with the under eye highlight to give a more natural-esque look. And using the same loose powder to really chisel the undersides of the cheeks before going in with our powder contours. Starting off with our basic contour, I'm using the Hard Candy Insta Bronzer in the shade Toasted as my initial contouring powder. Going in with the deepest contour, which is the NYX Can't Stop Won't Stop Pressed Powder in Deep, just to give my cheeks a more chiseled appearance. Then going in with the medium tone, which is the L'Oreal Infallible Bronzer in 200 Fair. We are using this to buff out everything together. And finally topping it off with the Charlotte Tilbury in Medium to dust everything together to make sure all the contours are married together. Mixing an e.l.f. blush along with the L'Oreal Peach Blush, I'm using both to create a more subtle peachy toned appearance. Second to last step with the powders, using the L'Oreal True Match in C5 Classic Beige to color correct all the highlights except for the under eyes to be more of a subtle appearance to give it a more skin toned look. Next up for shimmer highlighter, I'm using the Wet n Wild Duochrome that has a bit of green in it to really emphasize the limon of this look. It's a very subtle highlighter, but once it hits the light, it hits. Next up, to open up my waterline, I'm using the Hard Candy eyeshadow stick in Whiteout to really open up the under eyes. Going in with a liquid eyeshadow from Hard Candy called Moods in the shade Hype, I'm using this to give my under eyes a bit of a base color. And then using the shade La Festa from the same palette to set this eyeshadow along with giving it a more rich appearance. Going in with the LA Colors Wickedly Glam liquid paint, I'm going to use the white to open up the inner corner just a little more, before using the black to basically be my under eye eyeliner, as well as smoking it out with a angular brush. Making sure to smudge out that liner just to give it a more smoked out appearance, as well as blending in with the La Festa shade just to make sure everything is coordinated. Then using the LA Colors liquid liner, I'm just using this to line both my upper eyes as well as extending it down to the lower lids, just to give a more cat-like appearance. Moving on to lips, using the Rimmel Stay Matte Love Bite shade to be my lip liner, if you will, to overdraw my lips to have a more fuller appearance. Then going into the center of the lips with the Lottie London Slay All Day in Squad to make sure it is feathered out to the very edges. Using the MAC's Studio Cream highlighter on the center of the lips to give a more shimmery appearance, before topping it off with the L'Oreal Paris Infallible Pro Gloss in the shade Suede, just to have a creamy, iridescent finish. Next up, using mascara from Rimmel Madame Web to give my lashes a base before applying the lashes. Using a mixture of the Duo Brush On Lash Glue and the Ioni Lash Glue and Liner to give my lashes a great base to adhere to, before topping it off with another dose of mascara and then setting everything off with a glowy setting spray. I do hope you guys really enjoyed my tutorial today, and I hope to see you around for another. Remember, if you did like this, be sure to subscribe to all three of my channels at Iris Illusion 2020 on my YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Until then, see you then!